dares to debase their dignity, he shall answer to my scimitar." "Of course, your highness," Leo said, sweating. On the ride back, Pip Pringle, in an attempt to be helpful, tried to show the emir how to steer the boat. He accidentally knocked the emir's ceremonial hookah into the engine room, causing a small explosion and a cloud of purple smoke. "Wowie, wow, wow," the emir's guard shouted in a ceremonial greeting that sounded suspiciously like a terrified chicken. When they reached the base, Barnaby, who had miraculously recovered enough to stand on his balcony, saw the emir and immediately tried to take credit. He invited the emir to a grand dinner, pointedly excluding Lockwood. However, a crisis emerged. During the grand hula extravaganza earlier, Goose Gantry had accidentally hidden the dancers in the very guest quarters assigned to the princesses. To make matters worse, one of the real princesses had snuck off with Virgil Vance for a moonlight boat ride. With the dinner approaching and a princess missing, Leo had to act fast. "Gus," Leo hissed, "we need a princess." Now, Gus looked at Pip Pringle. Pip looked at the floor. 20 minutes later, the emir was seated at a long table with Barnaby. The third princess, a remarkably tall, hairy woman, with a familiar-looking mustache hidden under her veil, sat trembling at the end of the table. It was Pip Pringle, encased in silk and smelling of gun oil. "Your daughters are lovely, Emir," Barnaby said, trying to be charming. "And so, athletic-looking, they shall dance for you," the Emir declared. The music started. The two real princesses moved with grace. Pip, however, began a rhythmic clanking that sounded like a tractor hitting a fence. "Is the princess ill?" Barnaby asked, leaning in. "She has the spirit of the desert," the emir shouted. Suddenly, Barnaby noticed something. A pair of regulation navy boots peeking out from under Pip's silk skirt. He lunged forward and ripped off the veil. "Imposter!" Barnaby shrieked. "Pringle, you phony Balinese bunny." The emir stood up, his face purple. "You debase my lineage with a junior officer in drag? I shall raise this base to the ground. I shall write to Washington." Chapter 4. The Laughing Gas and the Great Grog. The diplomatic disaster was only averted when the missing princess returned. Explaining, she had merely been inspecting the naval assets with Virgil. But Barnaby was finished with lucky Leo Lockwood. He convened a fitness board to strip Pip of his commission and send Leo to the brig. "I'm a regular Casey Jones when it comes to railroading," Barnaby cackled, preparing his evidence. Leo's crew knew they had to change Barnaby's mood. They hatched a plan involving a tank of nitrous oxide laughing gas purloined from the dental clinic. They rigged it to the ventilation system of the Commodore's office just as the hearing was beginning. As the gas flooded the room, Barnaby, who had been in the middle of a screaming tirade, suddenly stopped. A giggle escaped his lips, then a chortle, then a full-bellied roar of laughter. "You torpedoed a garbage scow, Pip?" Barnaby gasped, tears of mirth streaming down his face. "Oh, that's rich. I love it. The potato peels. You thought they were camouflage." "Ha ha ha." He hugged Leo. He kissed Pip on the forehead. "Promotions for everyone. You're all such wonderful, funny little pirates." The hearing was cancelled in a haze of hysterical joy. However, the victory was short-lived. The gas wore off just as Admiral Sterling's jeep pulled up. Barnaby was found dancing on his desk with a nurse's cap on his head. "Binghamton," Sterling roared. "What in the name of the Great White Fleet is going on?" Leo stepped in. "The Commodore is suffering from tropical euphoria, sir. A rare condition. We were just performing a therapeutic fire drill. To prove the bravery of the crew, Leo pushed Pip Pringle out into the open during a sudden, unexpected air raid by a lone enemy scout plane. Pip, terrified and confused, accidentally fired a flare gun that hit the scout plane's engine, sending it spiraling into the lagoon. "Magnificent," Sterling proclaimed. "A man who stands laughing in the face of death. Pringle, you're a hero." Chapter 5. The Alligator and the Final Reckoning. The final absurdity arrived in the form of grog. A 1-2 foot alligator that lived in the swampy edges of Laguna Perdida. Grog had a peculiar taste for human belongings, specifically those belonging to the Commodore. One afternoon, while Barnaby was attempting to trap Leo in a payroll theft sting by leaving his marked wallet on a beach, Grog emerged from the reeds and swallowed the wallet whole. When Barnaby found Leo with the alligator, he naturally assumed Leo had trained the beast to rob him. "I'm taking you to court-martial, Lockwood," Barnaby screamed. "And the alligator is Exhibit A." The court-martial was a spectacle the likes of which the Navy had never seen. Grog the alligator was brought into the courtroom on a flatbed truck, looking bored. "I object," Pip Pringle shouted, acting as his own defense attorney. "You cannot call the witness stupid. He had an unhappy childhood. He's crazy about my mother's peanut butter." "Order in the court," the judge yelled. Leo's crew managed to lure Grog to open his mouth using a peanut butter sandwich. Out popped the wallet, perfectly preserved in the alligator's gullet. But there was a twist. Inside the wallet were the marked bills Barnaby had intended to use as bait. "Aha," the judge noted. "So the Commodore admitted to setting a trap for his own men? That is a violation of the leadership code." Barnaby's face turned the color of a ripe beet. He lunged for the wallet, but Grog snapped his jaws shut, narrowly missing Barnaby's fingers. "Why me?" Barnaby wailed as he was led away for a mandatory psychiatric evaluation. "Why is it always me?" As the sun set over Laguna Perdida, Leo Lockwood and his crew sat on the deck of the Sea Vixen, sharing a bottle of the Emir's finest and highly illegal, sparkling nectar. "To command," Leo said, raising a glass. "To the Navy," Pip added, adjusting his now permanent hero's medal. To the alligator, Gus Gantry smirked. The only honest witness in the whole damn archipelago. And in the distance, the sounds of a very angry Commodore screaming at the jungle birds echoed through the trees. A reminder that in Laguna Perdida, the only thing more dangerous than the enemy was the sheer, unadulterated incompetence of your own side. The end. The Chaos of Azure Bay, a novel of nautical nonsense and strategic stupidity. Chapter 1. The gastric garter belt crisis. The humidity at the Azure Bay naval outpost was thick enough to chew. It was a place where the sun didn't just shine, it interrogated you. Governor Barnaby Bilgewater, a man whose blood pressure was currently high enough to power a small industrial turbine, stared at his supply officer with eyes that promised a slow death by paperwork. "Wow," Barnaby repeated, his voice reaching a pitch that only dogs and particularly anxious seagulls could hear. "Wow, wow, wow. Garter belts, Lieutenant, you are the chief of logistics for this entire God's-forsaken archipelago. If the medical staff requires elasticated support for their hosiery, you do not question the structural integrity of the request. You snap to it, shake a leg, or at least find a leg to shake." Barnaby slumped into his chair, which groaned under the weight of his mounting insecurities. "What a war! The fate of the Sapphire Isles rests on my shoulders, and I am buried under a mountain of undergarments and clogged pipes." Just as he was about to reach for his third antacid of the morning, his sycophantic aide, Officer Cuthbert, burst through the door. "Sir, a message from the Admiralty. Grand Admiral Ironhide Grimshaw is arriving today for a surprise inspection." Barnaby's face turned a shade of grey, usually reserved for wet concrete. Grimshaw didn't just inspect bases, he dismantled souls. Ironhide? Coming here? Now? The Petty Officers Club has plumbing issues that would make a swamp creature weep. And who do they call? Me. I am a governor. Cuthbert, not a licensed plumber. My stomach acid could start a tractor. Cuthbert watched as Barnaby began to chew through a bottle of indigestion pills like they were candy. Calm? Barnaby's eyes suddenly twinkled with a malicious, feverish light. If I were sick, genuinely, medically, tragically ill, I couldn't possibly be held responsible for the state of this base. I would have to appoint an acting commander. A slow, wicked grin spread across his face. And who better to lead this circus into a ditch than that rogue, Captain Sterling? If I put Sterling and his pack of sea rats in charge of the base while the Admiral is here, they'll turn this place into an orgy of incompetence. they'll destroy themselves right in front of Grimshaw's cold, dead eyes.